morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today, and we're going to start it off with breaking news. Israel must stop any military operations in Rafah, the southern Gaza Strip, according to the United Nations top court, which issued the rule Friday. This is a direct condemnation of Israel's ongoing campaign against Hamas. The body's president, Nawaf Salam, said that provisional measures ordered in March are now insufficient given the dire state Gaza is in. As such, new emergency orders are now necessary. This is a developing story, and we will keep you updated. Meanwhile, lawmakers are split over Speaker Johnson's announcement Thursday that he intends to invite Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to deliver an address in a joint session of Congress. A formal invitation has not been made yet, but Democrats on Capitol Hill are already vowing to boycott Bibi. Speaking with CNN's Caitlin Collins Wednesday, independent Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders did not hold back. Let's watch.
Israel, of course, had the right to defend itself against the Hamas terrorist attack. But what Netanyahu has done is gone to war against, all-out war, against the entire Palestinian people, women and children. Why you would invite somebody who has done such horrific things to the Palestinian people is something that I think is a very bad idea.
Sanders also said he disagrees with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's signing off on the invite.
Democrats are fuming at the notion Netanyahu would be called to speak before Congress. Here's also New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
What if Schumer signs on to this invite to Netanyahu to address Congress?
I just don't think it's constructive for Netanyahu to be doing a joint address in this moment, period, regardless of who's sending the invitation.
I think it's Republican mischief in action.
I think he is not the right person to come and talk about affairs in the Middle East at this moment.
Elsewhere on Capitol Hill, it's a resounding no for former Speaker Nancy Pelosi when asked if she would attend a Netanyahu address to Congress. Representative Jan Schakowsky told the Hill Netanyahu is a menace, and she plans on boycotting, as she did in his previous address to Congress. Other lawmakers are not outright declining to go, but are treading lightly. Let's watch.
I think Republicans in the Senate would like to hear from the Prime Minister about how things are going.
I went the last time he came.
Would you go this time?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
The question is whether he has something to say that will be persuasive in supporting our continued solidarity with Israel. It should not be a political stunt.
Johnson's invite comes as the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu over war crimes being committed in Gaza. And the reaction to that arrest warrant being issued has essentially been, mostly Republicans, a lot of members of the U.S. Congress coming together, condemning what the ICC and the ICJ have done over the weekend, but also coming together to write some interesting legislation. H.R. 8445 is a piece of legislation from Max Miller, co-sponsoring with Guy Reschenthaler, and these two came together and wrote this bill that draws upon some adjustments to an expansion of veterans' benefits and programs to those who have served in the armed forces for the U.S. It extends those benefits to Americans who go on to serve in the Israeli army. I don't see this bill passing, but the reaction to everything that the international bodies are doing, the UN, the ICJ, and the ICC, has essentially been to double down on the U.S.'s support of Israel, with a few voices dissenting.
Yeah, that bill is bizarre. This is the first time hearing about it. It's very bizarre. But I wonder what you think about Nancy Pelosi, her recent condemnations of Netanyahu and her saying there that she wouldn't attend his joint address to Congress. This is, I think, a relatively new position for her. She's been pretty pro-Israel in the past. She's even sort of both sides to the protesters on college campuses, saying that they need to outright condemn Hamas and what happened on October 7th, in addition to their protest against Israel's actions. Now she's saying that she's not going to attend Netanyahu's speech. Are you surprised by that? And do you think that she is sincere when she talks about Netanyahu and Israel and condemning their actions in Rafah?
Yeah, it's interesting. The way I see Nancy Pelosi is kind of this hardline neoliberal, really for, privatization of public services. She's allowed that to happen under her watch. She's someone who benefits greatly from Congress people's ability to trade stocks. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's trading portfolio is well renowned as outperforming the market. It's just ridiculous. When I think about her, I think about how she recently said, she's all for members of Congress not being able to trade stock. It's almost like she's on the side of corporate America and the neoliberals until her position becomes so unpopular that she sees the tides change, she sees the media attention the issue's getting, and then she flips towards whatever's most popular within the party. And she'll really toe that line until she can't anymore. That's really how I see this, is she was on the position of, we have to defend Israel. I'm on board with the legislation that's going to send a bunch of money to Israel, despite this being incredibly unpopular among especially the youths and the Democratic Party. And now we're at the point where, we see the ICJ and the ICC's ruling. We see what public opinion is on the issue. And it's not on the same side Nancy Pelosi was on. And so now she jumped ship. She's kind of a bandwagoner when it comes to policy. And yeah, I don't see her as a leader in that way. We are seeing, some people flip-flopping, which is good. There's been a good amount of public pressure. I would credit, activists and organizers for her changing her views on that. I think as soon as you start, taking these issues off of the internet and making people a little bit uncomfortable in person on college campuses and people showing up whenever members of Congress are holding public events, demanding that they take a position on the issue and they pay attention to what's happening in Gaza and they're critical of Netanyahu, I think all of those organizing efforts have been good.
Yeah, I think you're right that Pelosi sort of goes whichever way the wind blows. She seems to be more interested in power than she is in actually having any extremely principled positions. What did you make of the White House's reaction to the ICC arrest warrant? Because the reports that have been coming out have said that the White House and the Biden administration have basically warned the ICC not to do this, not to mess with the West and its allies. So even as they've threatened to pull weapons shipments from Israel as they launch their invasion into Rafah, they have apparently tried to go behind Israel's back in negotiating the ceasefire agreement with Hamas that came out a couple of weeks ago. Israel said that they had been played by the Biden administration, but privately, the Biden administration is apparently still having Israel's back against this arrest warrant for Netanyahu and the foreign defense minister. Does any of this surprise you? And I mean, to me, it seems like the Biden administration is trying to have it both ways.
I think it's surprising in the sense that when we have wall-to-wall coverage of everything that's happening in Rafah and in Gaza, we see the destruction, we see, the children being killed, we see the impact of the leveling of northern Gaza and now the southern part of the region on our phones, on social media, even if mainstream media isn't doing solid coverage of what's really happening on the ground, people are seeing it. And I think we thought the United States government would change their tune on foreign policy, knowing we see the impact live, which I think makes this conflict much different than conflicts in the past where the United States has intervened and been on the wrong side of history, quite frankly. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing them double down. We're seeing the same country that was criticizing Russia saying they're breaking the rule of law. We need law and order at the international level. But then when the ICJ, the ICC, and the United Nations are all condemning what Netanyahu's administration and what Israel's doing right now, we're doubling down on our support of them. You can't say that you're all for rule of law until those laws apply to your allies. But that's what the United States has done throughout history. And so I'm not surprised at the actions, but I am surprised that, the messaging hasn't changed to acknowledge the reality we face every day and how their policy isn't matching up with that. Their statements aren't matching up with that. They're saying that Israel's still defending themselves when they've been on the offensive for months at this point. And so I think I'm just surprised that they're not more aware of what the room is. They're not reading the room, that everyone's seen the destruction. And you're still saying that Israel's the good guys. I think that's what's surprising for me.
Yeah, I'm interested to see in how the U.S. responds to this latest ICJ ruling, because in the statement, it says states arming this Israel offensive are now defying the ICJ ruling and are complicit in any war crimes committed in Gaza, they must stop supplying weapons immediately and instead press harder for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire to prevent further bloodshed and to ensure the safe return of all hostages and unlawfully detained Palestinians. So this could really represent a pretty major shift in the world order in terms of what really rulemaking power these international organizations really have. Do you think if the United States continues to defy this ICJ ruling, it's sort of a signal that this international order does not have the power that it really only enjoyed because of the backing of the United States? And what does that mean for all of the people who are in these organizations and the allyships that are created because of it? I think that's going to be something we're going to continue to watch here. And obviously, we'll see how Israel responds to this as well. And we'll be back with more Rising after this.